In this video, I'm going to be comparing Hardware 4 FSD to Hardware 3. Up here, I've got a 2023 Model Y, but it's a late 2023 from December, so that's when they have already switched over and they were installing Hardware 4. Up here, on the other side, I've got the Model 3, and this one has also Hardware 3 because it's an early 2023 model. I'm going to do the same route with both of the cars so you guys can compare it side by side. And now on the left side of the screen, you're going to see the Hardware 4, and on the right side is Hardware 3. Now sometimes I'm going to be cutting these shots just to basically cut out all the boring stuff and also to sync up the two versions together. So here on the Model 3 you can see we got autopilot computer, full self-driving computer 3, and the software is basically version 12.64. Now here in the Model Y, as you can see, we got full self-driving computer 4, and as far as the software goes for full self-driving, it's also higher, 14.225, which is the latest as of this time. Alright, let's start. It says 12 minutes. Okay, so we're going. So right now we're going, and essentially I put it into standard on both of the vehicles. Now, as we're watching these videos, kind of obviously pay attention, and I think you will notice pretty fast that Hardware 3, although it's supposed to be, not as sophisticated or slower than Hardware 4, at least when it comes to intersections, like it just seems to be a bit more decisive. Maybe you could say it's less careful. But in my experience, it just, basically it gets you to your destination a little bit faster because it doesn't sort of linger and wait and make sure that there's, like everything's perfect before it goes onto the intersection. Now in here, for example, FSD 3, here you'll see Hardware 3, it just takes a little bit more time because there's cars passing. So Hardware 4 in this case, kind of you could say overtook it, again, because there was just no traffic. But you'll kind of still notice that even though Hardware 3 had actually some cars passing by, and so because of that it had a delay, it actually catches up much quicker. Like even when it goes to driving on these straightaways like up here, Hardware 4 in standard mode is just driving really slow. Like it pretty much drives at the speed limit, and then I gotta every so on like hit the gas a little bit to tell it to go faster. Hardware 3 on the other side, basically, when standard mode, it still drives safely, but I would say it drives more like a human being. So it actually goes like a couple miles over the speed limit. And also another thing I like is that with Hardware 3, you can actually, turn the scroll wheel on your steering wheel and you can adjust your top speed. So you can, if it's going too fast, you can lower it down very quickly. If it's going too slowly, again, you can, speed it up. Whereas Hardware 4, you can add, like, press on the gas the pedal if you wanted to speed up. But otherwise, like if you wanted to slow down, if it's actually going too fast sometimes, then the second you press the brake, obviously you'll disengage FSD. But you see, like up here, both Hardware 3 and 4 are now at the same intersection at the same time. So Hardware 3 just sort of catches up a lot quicker. Now, when it gets to actually like this intersection, and even though there's a car there in front of Hardware 3 version on the right side, you'll notice like, look, Hardware 3 already is taking over and it's already making that turn. Hardware 4 is just like, again, maybe it's like half a second or a second longer, but it just kind of lingers more on these intersections. And so in a lot of my actually test drives, I noticed that Hardware 4, it gets you there, but it's like in this case, for example, the route said 12 minutes. Well, Hardware 4 actually got there almost like, I would say, a half a minute later than Hardware 3. Now, where an issue happened is that with the Hardware 3, and that's not like exclusive to Hardware 3, but it just so happened that that time the navigation told it to take these weird little side streets right at the end. And that happens with both of them. Sometimes just the navigation totally messes up the autopilot because it's just giving it essentially wrong direction. But again, like pay attention up here how fast you'll notice a more decisive Hardware 3 is.
It just kind of, again, it just goes for it, goes for the turns. Like up here, when we're approaching this roundabout, like look at it, like hardware 4 really slows down, whereas hardware 3 is already taking that turn. And you see it's almost come to the end of the roundabout, and now it's nicely turning right. Whereas hardware 4 now, it catches up, you could say. And then the same thing up here, there's going to be another stop sign where they're going to be turning left. And again, hardware 4 just takes a little bit more time. So that's why I actually noticed that it got to our location. Basically, hardware 4 got there like half a minute later than hardware 3. Yeah, this is the intersection. So you see there, hardware 3 is waiting. And even though there was a car there and had, you could say, traffic, it still beat hardware 4. See, hardware 4 took a long time, and now it's finally turning. So I always find that it's like too careful, and because of that, now I got used to driving with hardware 4, and I pretty much always put it in a hurry, which is not really hurry. It like drives still standard, but it drives like a little bit over the speed limit, but it's still very cautious, like, and it takes its time making the turns. And if I really want to go, you know, like I would normally be driving myself, then I have to go even higher than hurry. Okay, now here, yeah, again, it's a straightaway, and the only difference I notice is that, again, hardware 4 tries to stay really close to the speed limit, whereas hardware 3 just gets there quicker. Same thing up here, for example. Okay, like it just takes that turn a bit quicker, I think. It's a bit more, again, more decisive, it seems like it. Now, maybe it's not as safe, I don't know, but to be honest, in all of my driving, I have never gotten into a situation where a hardware 3 or 4 have done, like really just, you know, taken a really dangerous situation, like, you know, where it pulls out onto oncoming traffic or stops somewhere where it's dangerous. Up here, we're going to be driving a little bit. And again, we're going to get to another stop sign. Again, you'll see the same thing, that hardware 3 just reacts a little bit quicker and smoother versus hardware 4. Now, where hardware 4 really does have an advantage is on the parking lots, or basically, like, for example, driveways. Like hardware 3 pretty much will not recognize a driveway, so it will not park the car for you on the driveway. On parking lots, when they're like parking spots are clearly marked, there it will recognize it and will park it for you. Whereas hardware 4 is really good at that kind of stuff. Like even while it's moving, it will already recognize a driveway or a parking spot, and you can just tell it, okay, I want you to park there, and it will just go right there and it will park it for you. Now here at this point, this is where hardware 3, for some reason, well, I shouldn't say hardware 3, like the autopilot still is driving the same, but it's the maps, the navigation, which sucks on both of them. You know, and I think that's something like a really big thing that Tesla has to fix. For the most part, again, it works. The navigation will get you where you need to go, but every so on it just makes these really stupid decisions. So, for example, like at parking lots, forget about it. Like on a parking lot, it just gets confused. It doesn't know, like sometimes there's like a very easy way to get into a parking lot or leave a parking lot, and it just takes like a weird, you know, roundabout way. You see in here on hardware 3, it's already started turning into this street, like 2 streets earlier, and it's like a tiny little street, and then it took these smaller streets to get to Walmart where we're going. Whereas hardware 4 in this case, again, I don't even think it's so much hardware 4, but it's just the navigation for some reason decided, oh, you know what, it actually makes sense for us to just go, you know, to the you know, coming up street and then turn straight into Walmart as opposed to taking these side streets. And that's the reason why basically hardware 4 eventually ended up sort of catching up almost.
So you see here, looks like it's just going to stop right in front of Walmart, which I obviously wanted to go to a parking spot. So let's see. Yeah, it doesn't know what to do. It wants to turn right, which obviously it can't. So I'm going to tell it to turn left and see, will it go? Right now there's people crossing. So So it's turning left here, but there's people and there's cars. Oh my god. Okay, it's going. I see here I had to, with the hardware 3, I had to tell it to basically turn. And then here, for example, I'll stop and I wanted to park there. But you see, only until once I pressed basically the brake, only then it recognized that parking spot. And there, it did it. So here with hardware 4, it took a slightly different way than with hardware 3, but it's still telling me that it's going to go basically like here, right in front of the Walmart. But you see now it's decided to turn left because I'm guessing it recognized that there's nowhere to turn to the right side. So it's going to go, and I'm not going to interfere. As you can see, there's lots of people walking around. I got cars pulling out. Let's see. Okay, waited for this car, and it's gonna look for a parking spot. And you see it's gonna automatically start parking. Now it's gonna pull forward when it does that. If it finds a spot for you, we'll just pull forward. And there, did a good job. So definitely you need to be a bit more hands-on, you could say, with the hardware 3, because you need to tell it which basically section the parking lot to go and find the spot. So you see hardware 4, it's a little bit just faster in recognizing those parking spots for you. So like even as you're driving, it's going to start popping up basically up here. So not a big difference, because you know hardware 3 also does that. But for example, let's say I decide to park there. Like the actual parking itself, I notice is the same on both hardware 3 and 4. And there, parked. Now, for example, if I put in Starbucks, which we have right around here, let's see if it will park better there. So.
Now turn right.
Yeah, this is weird because the Starbucks is over there.
Destination is on the right.
See, again, I have to tell it where to basically go, where to park, because Starbucks is actually over there, the parking lot for it. But it didn't know. So, okay, now it figured it out, it looks like it. So it's going to turn right. Let's see if it will actually park. So yeah, if it goes forward, it should be able to see the parking spots. But you see, it doesn't recognize anything. But, oh, it's going to attempt to drive.
Destination is on the left.
Okay, and it did a horrible job parking. As you can see, it parked like in between the lanes. See, it didn't do a good job. I parked automatically, but it didn't recognize the spots like while in motion. Like if I were to pull out of here, see, once I'm driving and I just put the you know, my leg on the brake, then you see it does recognize all the spots. So then I can pick whichever spot I want to park in. And then it does it properly. It's just weird, like, you know, when it's on its own trying to decide, it doesn't have, I guess, as much of that processing power. Oh, where is it going?
500 feet, your destination will be on the right.
See, one thing I noticed is with the navigation is really weird. Like Starbucks was right there. If it just went straight and then to right. But because navigation is telling it to go here, 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 like do this weird route, that's where like the full self-driving is really good actually most of the time. It's the navigation that kind of is very confusing and yeah, basically essentially doesn't show it the right way. So when you're at a parking lot in general, though, I would say with hardware 3 or 4, pay attention to where the navigation is leading it, because essentially, see, it will take you to the wrong spot. Like, see, right now it's telling me to park here. Now, hardware 4, as you can see, parks it automatically. In this case, it recognized it's easy to back into the spot, so it just backs it in for me. But I actually wanted to go there, and so, you know, again, I would have to specifically on the map click there. And it's the navigation that sometimes will just give you a route that's not the fastest route or the easiest route. And that's especially true on parking lots. But even I noticed, like on taking long trips, that with both of hardware 3 and 4, that sometimes the navigation will just give it like I remember one time I was driving and there was a, you know, you could just go and then turn left onto a street. But for some reason, navigation said to go to the next intersection, do a U-turn, come back, and then turn right into that street, which was just like a weird roundabout way. And it will do that with both of the versions. So it's, I would say, almost like the full self-driving, both hardware 3 and 4 are really good. I mean, for most of the driving, you can use it. It's just a navigation you got to be always cautious of. If it gives you a bad, you know, route, then you have to reroute it or just take over in those moments. And then, you know, the other thing is navigating within places where there is no basically data, you know, for like map data. So things like parking lots or driveways or things like that. So what did you guys think of the hardware 4 versus the hardware 3? To be honest, like I've already tested out both of these cars. I've taken them on long trips, like over 300 miles. And actually at one point I had my family member drive one of the cars while I drove the other, and we were going for about 3 hours on the same route. And we were both driving an FSD, and to be honest, both of them performed equally well. Now, one, I would say, big difference is that with the hardware 3, I noticed when you're pulling into a parking spot, or let's say a big parking lot with a lot of spaces, it's not as fast in recognizing the parking spots. It does do it, it just maybe takes like a fraction of a second longer. Whereas with the hardware 4, sometimes, like if, for example, even if I like don't click the space, but I just, for example, tell it like drive, you know, park in the driveway or something like that, it will just go right away and do that for me. Same thing with you know, picking the parking spots. Like while I'm still moving with the hardware 4, it already recognizes all the parking spots, and I can click it and, you know, tell it to park. With hardware 3, you pretty much have to come to a stop, then it will show you the parking spots, and you click parking, and that's pretty much the biggest difference that I've at least noticed. Now, what's going to be interesting is what's going to happen as basically more updates come out. Right now, they both have basically the latest updates, but obviously this one has the slightly older version of FSD because the hardware is older. And so as hardware 4 keeps on getting updates, and maybe you could say it starts going away further from hardware 3, then it's going to be more interesting to kind of see, you know, are they really comparable at that point. Now, if you guys have experience using full self-driving, then let me know what you guys think about, for example, if you're using hardware 3 or hardware 4, or if you had a chance to use both of them, and what do you think is going to happen once hardware 5 is introduced, and then both of these vehicles, you could say, are outdated. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you subscribe, because I will have more content like this coming out.